Alright, hi everyone, how's it going? And welcome to another video. Now, I want to do a video on a movie I recently saw, and this is going to appear to be very random, although I have done a number of videos on music and bands before, so if you think about it, it's really not all that random. What I want to talk about today is the movie that recently came out on Netflix called The Dirt. It's about the band Motley Crue. It's based on the book that the members of Motley Crue wrote back in 2001 called The Dirt. And it's been getting a lot of attention, and I just thought I'd kind of talk a bit about it, give my own 2 cents. I did see it. And first off, I have to start off by saying that growing up, I was not really a big fan of Motley Crue. I was more of a fan of the big four of 80s thrash: Anthrax, Metallica, Megadeth, and Slayer. Motley Crue I didn't really get into until I picked up the album Decade of Decadence, and I liked some songs off of there, so I went out and bought the first 2 albums, Too Fast for Love and Shout at the Devil, and really liked those albums. I thought they were great. You know, really some great stuff on those albums. The third album I didn't like. In fact, the third album, I would say, they got what's been referred to as Savoy Brown syndrome. And what that is when a band will record an album and they'll have a really great song or a big hit, and the rest of the songs will be fillers. It's been referred to as Savoy Brown syndrome because I guess the band Savoy Brown would do that. I think from what I understand, most of the members of that band would leave and then form the band Foghat. But yeah, it's been called Savoy Brown syndrome. Motley Crue are guilty of doing that with their third album, Theater of Pain. I did not like Theater of Pain. I thought it was a lot of fillers, and they had that big hit, Home Sweet Home, which is giant. It was one of those songs that was on constant rotation on MTV back in the day, back when MTV played videos constantly. They played that one, and Motley Crue really was a band that benefited from MTV at the time. But yeah, so the interesting thing though, Too Fast for Love and Shout at the Devil, I've heard referred to as punk albums, and I don't see that at all. To me, those are glam metal albums. I don't know where people get the idea of it being punk, but I just never saw them as that. But so yeah, like the first 2 albums a lot. Other albums since then, I don't even know that I've even heard every album, but I did like the one they put out in 1994 with John Corabi. I thought that one was pretty good. And yeah, I definitely thought that was good. But yeah, not a huge fan, except like I said, for those first 2 albums. And you gotta understand, when those first 2 albums came out, they were seen as, Motley Crue was seen as being kind of shocking in a way. They had some shock value to them at the time. I could remember someone had given me Shout at the Devil at the time, actually maybe it was around, I forgot when it was, but I did get a copy of Shout at the Devil, and I remember my mom being kind of suspicious of it. My mom was always very open to whatever music I was listening to, but she was very suspicious of it by looking at the cover. Thought it was kind of strange because, yeah, like I said, it was seen as being very shocking at the time. And then in the 80s, you had that whole satanic panic thing going on. But yeah, but anyways, getting back to the movie. So the movie starts out with the band forming. Now, the timeline is off, so if you're kind of a stickler for the timelines of things and you don't like how they got some stuff wrong, or they had to tweak something to make something fit better, because I think there's some of that was done here. But yeah, so it starts out with the band forming, and they didn't get into the first singer of Motley Crue. The first singer of Motley Crue was not Vince Neil. It's actually a guy by the name of Odin Peterson. He auditioned for the band. He had an audition, and apparently he might have even recorded a demo, but they really liked his vocals, but there was something about his image they didn't like, I guess. They thought he appeared to be kind of a hippie or something. For some reason, they didn't like his image, so they got rid of him. And then they brought in Vince Neil. Now, Vince Neil was supposed to audition even before Odin, but he missed his audition. So then he came in, he nailed his audition, from what I understand. Then he got in the band. And after that, there was another incident where apparently they were going to add a second guitar player, a guy by the name of Robin. And Mick Mars objected to this. He didn't want this. So he had to tell the guy, you're out. I'm going to be the guitarist of this band. I guess he didn't want to do the two guitar thing, because Motley Crue was thinking of doing the two guitar thing to maybe have a more fuller kind of sound, but they didn't. They just went with Mick Mars. And a lot of people were saying that, that never happened, but it actually did happen. Mick Mars did confirm that it happened on the Eddie Trunk show not too long ago. I think he was promoting the last Motley Crue tour in 2014 or 15, and he was talking about this, and he said, yeah, they were thinking of doing a second guitarist. Another interesting thing about Mick Mars is he actually met Nikki Sixx before he even auditioned for Motley Crue. He actually met Nikki Sixx in I think it was a liquor store, and they started talking about bands. And the funny thing is, no one liked each other's bands. Mick hated Nikki's bands, Nikki hated Mick's bands. So, they didn't like each other's bands. So I guess it was kind of a little bit of a heated discussion. Then Mick showed up, and got the part in Motley Crue. Now, Mick Mars is an extremely underrated guitarist. He's probably one of the more underrated guitarists there is. And he really is the driving force of Motley Crue, and yet you never really hear people talk about him. So, yeah, definitely one of the great underrated guitarists. And I think that's because the other three members of the band are so high profile that sort of takes away from Mick Mars. He's one of those guys that you have in the band that's kind of low-key. He's like the low-key guy in the band. But, so the other guys, are famous, and definitely talks about all the things that the other guys in the band did. Goes into the 1984 car accident that Vince Neil was in, where his friend Razzle from the band Hanoi Rocks was killed. And I know there was a little bit of a screw up there. They made Razzle out to be English, and from what I understand, he was Finnish, as Hanoi Rocks were one of the first major Finnish bands, from what I understand. Now there's a lot of bands from Finland, Nightwish and all that. There's a lot of bands that come out of Finland. But, so that they got into all of that, the whole car accident, and then it did get into the Nikki Sixx's ODing. Now, apparently, when Nikki Sixx OD'd, he was actually hanging out with Slash, Izzy Stradlin, and Robin Crosby of Rat, and he then OD'd, and it actually was reported that he had died. The news actually reported that, and apparently that was true. They really did report that he had died, so that part was true. But other things, the timeline was kind of off in some other areas. For example, and this has been brought up by a number of people already, but Vince Neil's daughter who had died, Skylar. It had her being born around 84, 85, when she was actually born in 91. Now, I know, fans will kind of be put off by that because, that the timeline is off in that regard. But yeah, no, his daughter had died in 91. And it didn't mention anything of the son that Vince Neil had in 1978. Vince Neil has a 40-year-old son. And, my best of knowledge, he wasn't mentioned at all. I don't know if he's mentioned in the Dirt book that, this movie was based on. That I don't know. But, yeah, so gets into all that. Now, a number of people have suggested that maybe Nikki Sixx has kind of overhyped the band's decadent ways, that wasn't really that, outrageous and decadent, that they overdo it. I know people mention this and have talked about it. People who have known Nikki Sixx have said that they've never known him not to be as sharp as a tack, that he always had everything together, so they think they kind of overplay all the excess and decadence and all that Motley Crue is known for. It's like part of their image in a lot of ways, like part of their brand. So I think they kind of play that up, and it's possible they overdo it. I'm sure they do. But, yeah, other things there. I would say that as a whole, thought it was okay. If you like these kinds of rock movies, I think you'd probably like this, I think, if you do like those. But, I don't know, if you're not a fan of Motley Crue, you might not. I know there are a lot of people, because Motley Crue, from what I understand, kind of like Kiss, where they're like a love 'em or hate 'em band. Either you love them or you hate them, and Motley Crue's kind of like that. Because, their image was definitely overblown. They kind of wanted to do what Kiss were doing, but take it to another level. So, yeah, if, you might like it, you might not. Like I said, I thought it was okay. It reminded me a lot of that Def Leppard movie that came out not too long ago. It had the same kind of feel. There is a cheese quality to it in some parts, where it does come off kind of cheap and cheesy. I would say that. I didn't really get as much of a feel with that with like the Bohemian Rhapsody that came out. I didn't really get the feel of that, but Queen, of course, appeals to a much broader audience, broader demographic, because they cover so many different genres with their music. Motley Crue, it's more niche, and as a whole, though, it was all right. Like I say, I never did read the Dirt, read a lot of these rock books. Just never got a hold of that one, but I did want to see this when I saw that it was going to be on Netflix and all that. But, yeah, so, like I said, I think some people would like it. I guess some people didn't like it because, it did cover all the bad things that the members of the band did, and they felt that there was a tone to this movie of, even though we did all these bad things, it was just a lot of fun. Everything was just a lot of great fun. That there was kind of a tone to the movie like that. That, they're doing these bad things, but it was all just a bunch of fun. And they do some terrible things in this movie. So, yeah, I could see where people would say that. So, yeah, as a whole, kind of gave my 2 cents on it, but just to add a little more. Mick Mars, for example, I know when the band formed, he was the only one that really had a lot of experience, from what I understand. He was actually in a band in the 70s called White Horse, and you could see there's a video that shows one of their shows from 1975, and he has this like rotating drum kit. It's kind of like what Tommy Lee would have later on. And the thing is just like really dangerous. I think the drummer said he was almost killed on this thing. But yeah, you could see it on the YouTube video for White Horse in 1975. They show it. This thing like rotated. It looks so dangerous because it looks kind of crudely fashioned together and then all that. But yeah, so he was in this band White Horse for a while. And then I know he was in another band called Vendetta. So yeah, he had been in bands. He had some experience. And Tommy apparently knew Vince Neil. I know Tommy Lee was in a band called Sweet 19. I want to say Vince was in something too. And here's another thing the movie got wrong. Motley Crue's first concert. In this movie, they had Motley Crue's first concert being in front of a bunch of bikers, and they get into a fight. Things are really rowdy. When in reality, from what I understand, their first concert was at the Starwood, opening for Y&T. So that was their first concert. Y&T, another underrated band, by the way. But yeah, it was for opening for Y&T. So yeah, I thought I'd kind of add that. Didn't want to really leave those details out, but yeah, that I didn't get into or talk about. Did talk about the incident with Ozzy Osbourne, which I know for a fact is mentioned in The Dirt, the book. And when I saw that scene, I immediately knew, oh yeah, they took that right from the book they had written. But yeah, so definitely worth checking out if you do like these kinds of movies. If you are a fan of Motley Crue, of course you're going to like it, most likely. But you might also see kind of that, like I said, the bit of a cheese factor that it has in some parts. But overall, I thought it was just okay. I personally liked Bohemian Rhapsody more for, if we're talking about recent rock movies that have come out. And I kind of feel like they'll probably be coming out with more rock movies like this. And I know people were like, why doesn't this band have a movie? Why doesn't this band? But I have a feeling there will be more coming out. There is some like buzz around this movie. I'm sure Motley Crue will start getting more downloads, or people taking more interest in them, maybe wanting them to tour again. I know their last show, I believe, was in 2015, and they said they were going to end it. But I believe the soundtrack for this movie does have some new songs, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's all I've got. If you watched this video, as always, I thank you for watching. Have a good night.